Hey there, YouTube. Baylor here, and today I want to talk about events, specifically the events of Act 2 in Slay the Spire, and what to do on your run. Should you be taking events? Should you be taking combats? What do you do in the events of Act 2? And what makes them better? What's the best event? What's the worst event? And which one is the most dependent on what items you have? For the purposes of explaining all of the events here, normally in order to show you every event in Act 2, I would have to play through multiple runs. But I've set up a sort of demo run here in-game, and I'll be using console commands to simply take this run through every single event in Act 2 to showcase each and every one of them and what a whole bunch of the Relic interactions of the game are. This should help you decide in your own game if you have the right pieces in place to make the most use of each of the events, or if you should opt out, decline, or say no to those spooky ghosts. So let's jump into our demo run here. Oh, it actually does bring me back to the boss chest. We're having a hypothetical Ironclad run here who's picked the Coffee Dripper Relic, going into the second act of Slay the Spire. We load in, and the map looks like this. What do you do? Normally, you have a difficult decision to make between fighting elites, fighting enemies, and taking events. Particularly in Act 2, the events can look really juicy. There's a lot of possibility here. And in particular, the combats of Act 2 are really, really nasty. If your deck's not prepared, it's very easy to take a ton of damage from the first, second, or third combat that you get into. Some really nasty ones in here, like the Snake Plant, the Shelled Parasite. Oftentimes, you're greeted by two thieves at the beginning of Act 2, and that can take a lot of health off of you, which makes it really tempting to avoid those combats by diving into unknown rooms. But are those unknown rooms really worth it? It really depends on what you've got going. So let's take a look at all the different events that you can find in Act 2. I'm using a mod called Info Mod to allow me to display the event overview here. This actually lists all of the events in Act 2. In Act 2, there are 13 regular events. Check my Act 1 events video for a bit of a description between the difference of a regular event and a shrine. But in short, there's two rarities of events. Regular events, which have about a 3 times chance compared to a shrine to show up. And shrines, which can appear in multiple acts and are much rarer. So, 13 different events, and we're going to look at these one by one and go through them, take a look at what they actually do, starting with Ancient Writing here. So what I'm going to be doing is using the console command to start each of these events. Is it Ancient Writing? Oh, that's right. I need to refer to... called Back to Basics. There we go. So, this is one of the events you're going to see in Act 2, and one of the better ones, in my opinion. Scaling the city. You notice a wall covered in the writing of ancients. As you try to wrap your head around what the puzzling symbols and glyphs could mean, the writing begins to glow. In this event, you're offered a choice between removing one card or upgrading all of your strikes and defense, every single starter card that you have. Most characters start with 8, 9, or 10 starter cards. And my usual rule of thumb for this one is that if you're getting 5 or more upgrades, then it's often worth it to upgrade all the basics. Getting an improvement to your strike and defend cards doesn't necessarily seem like it's all that helpful. Strikes go from 6 to 9, defends go from 5 to 8. But if you have a lot of them in your deck, it's kind of inevitable that you're going to end up playing some of them, just because of how frequently you'll draw them, and you really want the additional numeric output when that happens. If you've been diligent in removing your starter cards, or if you've got a particularly bad card you want to get rid of, like a curse, then it can be worth to take the one remove, the Elegance. This can be really helpful for really small decks of less than 10 cards that are trying to turn into something refined. But my rule of thumb is that if you get 5 or more upgrades here, you should take the upgrade all. The truth is always simple. This event can appear even if you have no strikes and defends, in which case the removal is pretty much always the go-to choice there. Alright, what's next on the event list? Augmenter. This is another common event in Act 2. Drug dealer. Drug dealer is the actual... Alright. Drug dealer. You encounter a drug dealer with an eye patch and a devilish grin. Hey there, stranger. Interested in advancing drug deals? I can make you stronger than any training or blessing. You're gonna need it if you're one of those heroes with a drug deal wish. What do you say? Note that none of your options are to refuse this man. You can test the jacks, you can become a test subject, or you can ingest mutagens, but no matter what, if you find this man, you are on board with his project. You are a willing participant. You just get to choose your own adventure, I suppose. Overall, this is actually one of the better events in Act 2. Just like the Ancient Writing event, you get 2 different choices on that one, 3 different choices here, and all of them are vaguely positive, so you get to choose which one is the best for you. And all of these are quite good in different situations. Option A, Jax. Jax is a 0-cost card which says lose health, gains strength. That's strength for the whole combat. And this card doesn't exhaust, so you can play it multiple times. This card is really nice in decks that can afford the hit point loss and need a bit of strength gain. And since this is strength gain that's accessible to any character, there's lots of possibilities here. On Ironclad, you already have native healing with the Burning Blood starting relic, 6 health per combat. So the Jax is reasonably affordable there. And there's lots of uses for strength on Ironclad. On Silent, Shivs and cards like Finisher can be really, really significantly improved with a couple points of strength. So if you're an attack spam Silent, Jax is worth considering, especially if you haven't found accuracy yet. On Defect, 0-cost attacks like Claw, Beam Cell, and Go for the Eyes all interact really nicely with Jax. Defect also has the ability to get back the Jax with either Hologram or All for One to play it multiple times. And Watcher can deal double or triple or even more than that damage with her stances and the vulnerable status effect, so a little bit of strength goes a very long way on the Watcher. And because this card is 0 cost, you can use it to do a ton of damage very, very quickly if you're willing to lose a little bit of health. So I'd say you should consider this top option for any character with a bit of a healing surplus. If you've got meat on the bone or some other way to heal lots, then it's worth a thought if you do attack damage. The second option, Transform 2, is probably the option I find myself taking about 80% of the time. You turn 2 cards into 2 new random cards, and this is a really good way to get rid of starter cards. Interactions here to note are that when you transform a card, this counts as removing the card that you transformed and then adding a new copy of a random card. And that has a couple of purposes. First of all, if you have the egg of the same type as the card, Molten Egg for attacks, Toxic Egg for skills, Frozen Egg for powers, then the card gets upgraded. And if you have the Ceramic Fish Relic, whenever you add a card to the deck, gain 9 gold, you get 9 gold per card you transform with Ceramic Fish. So there's an extra little interaction there if you happen to have this otherwise fairly underwhelming common relic. More on that in a bit. Ceramic Fish has some fun interactions in Act 2. Last option, Mutagenic Strength, gives you 3 strength on turn 1. It's implemented as 3 strength and then 3 of the debuff strength down, which can be blocked by an artifact charge. So this works really nicely with the Clockwork Souvenir Shop Relic. And in general, I like mutagenic strength on decks that draw a lot of cards on turn 1. Any deck that has Bag of Preparation, any silent deck that has a lot of attack cards can really benefit from mutagenic strength. So I find myself taking this most often on silent, but can be very good on Ironclad and Watcher as well, to have strength on turn 1. Very good also if you have Bag of Marbles to make enemies vulnerable on turn 1, as the combination of bonus strength and vulnerable enemies is enormous turn 1 damage. In this case, I think I would argue for a transform. Let's turn 2 strikes into something else here. Note that our gold goes up as the cards get added because of the ceramic fish. And the whirlwind that was transformed into is upgraded because of the molten egg. Transforms can be very, very good, and there's a couple decent transform options that'll appear in Act 2. Alright, our third event. I like that they're grayed out as we see them. The Council of Ghosts, which are also under a different name. Wait. Just ghosts. Event ghosts. As you continue your ascent, thick black smoke begins to billow out of the ground and walls around you, coalescing into 3 masked forms that start to speak. Another puppet of Niao, I think. Agreed, she always makes the funnest toys. You notice an oversized grin as the third addresses you. Ignore the others. Would you like a taste of our power? The Council of Ghosts offer you a extremely transformative deal. This is probably one of the most make-or-break events in the game. You can accept and receive apparitions. This is the number of apparitions you get will depend on your Ascension level. Below Ascension 15, you get 5 apparitions, but starting on Ascension 15, unfavorable events, you'll only get 3. In exchange, you must give up half of your max HP to receive 3 of these apparition cards. It's a very costly deal, but note that the cards you get are some of the strongest cards in the game. 1 intangible means any damage you take for 1 turn is reduced down to 1. So essentially you're invincible for 1 turn, although you can still take small amounts of damage. You just need a very small amount of block to counteract any incoming damage, as it's reduced to 1. 3 apparitions is therefore 3 turns of invincibility. I think apparitions are best in decks that don't have a solid defense plan, but do have a lot of damage in them. Looking at the deck that this Ironclad has, our only block would be 4 measly defense, and there's a lot of attacks and damage stuff. So I think apparitions would befit this particular run really, really well, because they would create turns where the Ironclad is able to trade blows and deal lots of damage to foes very quickly. Apparitions get a lot better if you can get them upgraded when you get them. The Toxic Egg Relic will do this. The upgrade relic for skills specifically. Apparition pluses don't have the ethereal keyword, which means they won't exhaust in your hand if you choose not to play them. It's a really big downside about apparitions normally, is you have to play them as you draw them. You cannot keep them without discarding them or other shenanigans, unless they have an upgrade. Upgraded apparitions with the ability to retain them, super, super strong. So for example, Toxic Egg plus Runic Pyramid makes apparitions very, very, very ridiculous. Probably the best thing ever. You can indeed also scry them away as a way to keep them. And just like some of the other events in Act 2, if you have Ceramic Fish, you'll gain 9 gold per apparition if you choose to take them. Don't think this Ironclad will take them. We'll refuse the Council of Ghosts. Generally speaking, if you already have a good block plan, you've got good access to weaken, or you have powers that generate a lot of block, then I don't recommend taking the apparitions, because they are redundant with the defense you've already created. If you've put a lot of investment into block, it'll be made less effective when you take these apparitions. So hopefully that can provide some guidance. The other last thing I'll say about apparitions is that they are a big difference maker in your ability to kill Act 2 elites. Fighting elites in Act 2 can be very, very difficult. You do need a lot of front-loaded damage capability to take them on. Let's see, let's mark them all in red. And normally taking something like 3 elites in Act 2 is only for the boldest, the bravest. Certainly not for the faint of heart at all. However, if you have apparitions, it's much, much easier, in my opinion, to get through Act 2 elites without taking substantial amounts of damage, especially if you have, as aforementioned, a decent damage plan of your own. So, do take these if you have lots of damage output. Do take these if you need to fight elites in Act 2. Otherwise, strongly recommend refusing, especially recommend refusing more frequently the higher your max health. How disappointing. You will join us sooner or later. Ha 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 ha. Shapes fade away, leaving only the unnerving laughter ringing in your ears. Ha. Ha. Next up, the Cursed Tome. This is one of my favorites. In an abandoned temple, you find a giant book open, riddled with cryptic writings. As you try to interpret the elaborate script, it begins to shift and morph into writing you are familiar with. So you have a choice here to either read or leave. You should be immediately aware that choosing to read is going to start causing your character damage. The game does not make this clear. It's one of the times that the events are not upfront about what they do. But ultimately, the top option, if you read the book, you have to pay health, eventually getting a book relic. The total health that you must pay is 21 health if you're on Ascension 15 or above, and 16 health, 5 less health, if you're on a lower Ascension level than that. So if you have enough health, I highly, highly recommend reading the tome. There are 3 different book relics that you can get, and all of them are a little bit unique and interesting. The book seems to be about an ancient named Niao. This piques your interest, but you have a general feeling of malaise. Once you choose to read, you can't stop taking damage. The Ancient of Resurrection Niao was exiled to the bottom of the spire. You feel compelled to read more, but your body begins to ache. Seeking vengeance, Niao blesses outsiders, using them for her own purposes. You're starting to feel very weak and tired. Those resurrected by Niao remember only fragments of their past selves, cursed to fight for eternity. As you near the final page, your old wounds begin to reopen. So, even if you stop, you can lose more health. But you're allowed to leave at the very beginning without taking any damage. So, you gotta either commit or don't, but definitely don't get this far and then don't take the book. Obtain the book, you pay 1 final health price, and then get the relic. This one is the Enchiridion, the legendary journal of an ancient lich. This creates a random zero-cost power from your character's class at the start of each combat. I think that's my favorite these days, just because it's simple, easy, and comes with no downside. The other 2 relics that you can get, let's just add those via console so that you can see them, are Nilri's Codex, this one here, crafted by the infamous Game Master himself, said to expand one's mind to galactic portions. And that's actually a pretty accurate description, because this is a relic with very high cognitive load, I'll call it. Every turn of every fight, you get to choose a card reward that then goes into the draw pile. So you can choose one of 3 cards to put into the draw pile. The cards generated are random cards from your character's class, unupgraded all. There's a few exceptions. Spire, generally speaking, can't randomly generate things that would give you a permanent bonus. So, for example, you cannot use Nilri's Codex to get self-repair on Defect or Alchemize on Silent. However, there are some serious shenanigans that you can do with Nilri's Codex. It's just vaguely useful in and of itself. This can generate useful powers, like that are one-time use cards, or otherwise generate cards with the exhaust keyword that are one-time use, like Impervious on Ironclad. It can also generate Exhume on Ironclad, allowing you to return another exhausted card. And on Silent, it can make Nightmare, allowing you to duplicate another card. If you're creative enough, you can find ways to get things like multiple feeds out of one combat with this, or to create unlimited number of potions on Silent. There's some serious nonsense that can be done if you're patient enough. But even if you don't want to try to break the game with this relic, it's just very useful to have the option to put new cards into the draw pile. In particular, this thing can create solutions to fights you otherwise have no answer to, and is especially useful, in my opinion, against the Act 2 boss, the Champ, because Champ is a fight that is very slow-paced. Champ will patiently wait for you to come up with something, which Nilri's Codex is happy to provide for you. The last relic you can get, I think, is the most interesting one. Relic and Necronomicon. Note that when you pick the Necronomicon, you are immediately cursed with a unique curse. Only a fool would try to harness this evil power. At night, your dreams are haunted by images of the book devouring your mind. The first attack played each turn that costs 2 or more is now played 2 times. This is only a useful relic if you have 2 or more cost attacks, but if you do, oh my, is it powerful. On Ironclad especially, this can be obscene here. We can double the bash, we can double the bludgeon, and if you pay 2 or more energy, Whirlwind also becomes a 2 or more cost card, and will get doubled just at the same. That counts as 2 separate card plays, so it makes relics like the Shuriken activate twice. But note the Necronomicurse. Necronomicurse is a curse that you cannot get rid of, ever. It cannot be removed from your deck by any event or effect. You cannot even exhaust it. It'll come back to your hand immediately, so you'll always bear the weight of the Necronomicurse. Note that we did actually gain max health from having this relic, the Darkstone Periapt, and gold from the Ceramic Fish, because a curse was added to our deck. So that's kind of neat. But those are the 3 book relics that you can get from the Cursed Tome. All of them are quite powerful. Not every run can benefit from the Necronomicon, but every run can benefit from the other 2. So as long as you have the health to afford it, I strongly recommend taking the book. That's my advice for that event. Let's see, what's next in the event list here? The Forgotten Altar. Perfect. This is one of the nasty events in Act 2, and this is a big reason to potentially avoid an early Act 2 event. Not all of the Act 2 events are going to be good for you, generally speaking. And this one can be real trouble. In front of you sits an altar to a forgotten god. Atop the altar sits an ornate female statue with arms outstretched. She calls out to you, demanding sacrifice. This is an event where the Golden Idol relic from Act 1 can be used. If you don't have the Golden Idol, you'll only see these bottom 2 options. Sacrifice, you gain max health but lose a huge chunk of current health, or Desecrate, and just get cursed. And choosing between these 2 bottom options is not fun, let me tell you. So if you don't have the Golden Idol from Act 1, and most runs don't. I'd say only about 25% of runs get this offered to them, even if they're kind of diligent with Events Act 1. Then taking an early Act 2 event can cause you to lose a ton of health. And this can definitely be a death spiral for many runs that go into early Act 2. A potential reason to avoid events in the first place. Oftentimes, if you have to choose between these, I recommend the Sacrifice. Gaining max health. Note that the amount of health change that you experience is the sum of these 2 effects. So you gain 5 max health, heal for 5, and then lose 30. So net minus 25. And the healing does apply first, in case you had, let's say, 27 health right now. This wouldn't kill us, because we'd gain the max health first. Desecrate to get a curse is not too bad if you really need the current health. Or, for example, if you again have Darkstone Periapt, this would be gain 5 max health, lose 30 health, or get cursed, gain 6 health. That's not bad. But if you have Golden Idol, I very strongly recommend swapping it for the Bloody Idol, which is a special empowered version of the Golden Idol. As you gently set the idol onto the altar, a cold wind swirls throughout the room. The arms of the statue begin to discolor and crumble. Your golden idol begins to dull in color and begins bleeding from its eyes. The bleeding never ceases. The idol now weeps a constant stream of blood and says, whenever you gain gold, heal 5 HP. It's actually a couple of really interesting things that does. More on that in a moment. But generally speaking, Bloody Idol is one of the best healing relics you can get. It's really good, especially if you have the Coffee Dripper. Every single combat in Slay the Spire drops money. So I like to think of this as heal 5 health per combat. But there are other situations where you gain gold. Next event. The Masked Bandits. Another common event. You encounter a group of bandits wearing large red masks. Hello. Pay up to pass. A reasonable fee of all your gold will do. You can either fight the Red Mask Gang for your life, or you can give them all of your gold. Every single penny you have. Generally speaking, I strongly recommend taking the fight here. It's a pretty rewarding fight. You'll get a substantial amount of money, and they drop a special relic that's quite nice. However, note that this fight is no joke. These three are quite dangerous and will definitely test you, especially if it's very early in the act. The less damage output your deck has, the worse this fight is. You really have to do a lot of damage very quickly, or you'll get overwhelmed. I also want to showcase the text here. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to pay out, just to show something off, first and foremost. If you choose to pay them to avoid the fight, you lose all your money. Hee, thanks for the gold. Oh, I love gold. It's so nice. Shiny, shiny chits they are. Hey, Bear, hey. This guy gave us all his gold. What a sucker, right? Get this, I just had to ask nicely. Who knew? I certainly didn't. What a chump. Gang, let's all have a laugh for this wondrous occasion. Ha ha! Ho, ho, ho. Ho. And then you leave. Fun fact. If you look at the map, and then click this button, Return, they'll mock you even more. It's one of only a couple events in Slay the Spire with extra secret text if you come back from the map. Oh, you're still here? Did you overhear something? Didn't think so. Loser. Ha ha ha. Oh. Well, let's try that again. Oops. That one. Ah! There we go. You encounter a group of bandits wearing large red masks. Hello! Pay up to pass. No. You pay up to pass. So this fight's actually quite a tricky one. On turn 1, Romeo says, grab 'em, Bear. Let's actually break down the AI of these three before I slaughter them mercilessly for calling me a loser. It's a triple threat fight. First up, Pointy. Pointy is very basic. Pointy always attacks for 6x2. He's a constant annoyance. But the real threat is Romeo and Bear, who give you a free turn 1, so to speak. On turn 1, Romeo mocks you, and Bear grabs you, giving the player a dexterity penalty. -4 on the highest ascensions, only -2 on lower ascensions. Turn 2 is where things get gnarly, because all three of them attack you for about the same amount of damage. 12 plus weaken from Romeo. Bear does damage and blocks. And then on turn 3, Romeo will attack for 17, and Bear will attack for 20. Which means you're looking at a ton of damage headed your way if you can't kill them very quickly. Your ability to block is almost non-existent, so the only real way to solve the incoming damage is to deal damage yourself. We do that plentifully here, but if you cannot get them all easily, my recommended order of operations is this. If you can kill Bear on turn 1 and block the Dex debuff, do it. That's a good idea. If you can't kill Bear on turn 1, then you should start doing damage to Romeo, because you want to prevent Romeo weakening you on turn 2. Then once Romeo's down, you should seek to kill Bear, and then probably Pointy last, because ultimately Pointy has the lowest damage output per turn of the 3 of them, especially for turn 3. But ideally you use some kind of AoE or something and just kill them all immediately. It's a much easier fight that way. You get more than average gold for beating them. A normal fight drops between 10 and 20 gold. We got 34 here, which does also heal us because of the Bloody Idol. You also get the Red Mask. This very stylish looking mask belongs to the leader of the Red Mask Bandits. Technically, that makes you the leader now, as the Red Mask gang is no more. You've slaughtered them. You also get a card reward, and card rewards are pretty nice too. Fun interaction to point out between the Bloody Idol here and the Ceramic Fish. Pretty rare to get both of these together. But if you are gaining health whenever you gain gold, and you're getting gold whenever you add a card to the deck, then you heal whenever you add a card to the deck. That's pretty cool. So that's the Red Mask gang. The Pleading Vagrant. Beggar? No, Beggar's Cleric, right? What's the Vagrants? Addicts. That's right, because he used to ask you for jacks, but he no longer does. This used to be a complement to the Augmenter event. You could actually bring the jacks to the Pleading Vagrant to get a relic. These days, the Pleading Vagrant's all about the money, though. While sneaking past a group of shrouded figures, one of them approaches you. "Got anything for me, friend? Please, maybe some coin? I just need somewhere to stay. I have treasures I can trade." He seems delusional but harmless. The Pleading Vagrant has a relic. He's willing to trade that relic to you for 85 gold if you've got it. Very good deal. I almost always pay him for it if you have the money. You can also choose to rob him. Take the relic from him and get a curse instead. Not a bad deal if you have the Omamori relic that blocks curses. You can also gain max health with the Darkstone Periap. Note that we'll gain max health and current health. We should heal for 6 plus 5, taking a curse here, right? Yeah, it's a ton of heals. And we get a second Ceramic Fish? Wait a minute. That's cheating. Hold on. That's cheating. You can't have 2 of the same relic. You have some shame. Wait, I didn't read that. You snatch the precious relic from his clutches and walk away. From behind you here, have you no shame? Have you no shame? You have some shame. A shame curse, that is. Usually a bad thing can be a good thing with something like the Darkstone Periapt. So that happened because the Ceramic Fish that we had earlier was acquired in some of the same ways that the events we were seeing are. A little bit of a glimpse behind the curtain for this video, but that's okay. That's okay. But yeah, usually I recommend paying the Pleading Vagrant. In most cases, you're going to want that relic, though. So, do consider. I'd say I'd probably rob him about 10% of the time and pay him 90%. All right, if we're going in order, next is the library, but I do want to showcase some other interactions here. So I'm going to go slightly out of order. We'll be back to the library momentarily. Let's do the Mausoleum. The Mausoleum. Venturing through a series of tombs, you are faced with a large sarcophagus studded with gems in the center of a circular room. You cannot make out the writhing on the coffin, however, you do notice black fog seeping out from the sides. On high ascension, this is a curse for a relic. On lower ascensions, there's only a chance you gain the curse. It's a 50% chance to get Writhe Curse for relic. Like other curse for relic events, this is only really worth it if you have some incentive here. If you're getting bonus max health or bonus strength, or if you have an Omamori that can prevent the curse. Otherwise, taking a curse and a relic is often a losing trade. Particularly of note, this is the Writhe Curse, which is always drawn in your opening hand. It's pretty nasty, and so most of the time I leave. But we'll crack it open here, get another curse. Gambling Chip is another reason to take the Writhe. Yes, Gambling Chip lets you discard your turn 1 draws. And if you can always discard the Writhe with the Gambling Chip, then it's not so bad a curse to have and can be very tolerable. So Gambling Chip can also make taking this quite worth it. This is another one I skip most of the time. You push open the coffin, getting another duplicate relic. As you do, a black fog spews forth and covers the entire room. Inside, you find no body, but only a relic. You take it and move onwards, coughing violently. We'll take that duplicate egg, but that's what the event says. If you choose to take the relic, you cough on the black fog writhing around. Looks like the relics are on a loop. They're on a roll. All right, a few more. The Nest. A long line of hooded figures can be seen entering an unassuming cathedral. Naturally, you join the line and are quickly surrounded by cultists. They ignore you as they gleefully chant and wave their weapons around. Murder, murder, murder. Caw, caw, caw. Murder, murder, murder. Caw, caw, caw. You eye a donation box. You can either smash and grab, getting some money, 99 gold on lower ascensions, or you can stay in line, take some damage, and obtain a card called the Ritual Dagger. This is the only way to get this card, is this event, and you can only get one copy per run. You can only encounter the event once per run. The Ritual Dagger is an attack that says deal 15 damage. If fatal, if this card kills a non-minion enemy, permanently increase this card's damage by 3. Ritual Dagger is one of the more unusual and very fun cards in Slay the Spire. Every time you kill an enemy with it, it gets stronger permanently. The earlier in Act 2 you see this event, the better it is, generally speaking, because the more opportunities you'll have to improve it with combats. This is also a much better event if you happen to have that Molten Egg relic, because the Molten Egg upgrades the Ritual Dagger. Ritual Dagger Plus says permanently increased by 5 each combat. The average run of Slay the Spire will do probably 15 to 20 combats after Act 2. So you can level this up quite a bit. The highest I've personally scaled Ritual Dagger to is actually almost 200 damage, using Exhume on Ironclad to return it to my hand and kill multiple enemies per combat with it. It's not that difficult to get Ritual Dagger to do 100 damage, and I really like it for that reason, because it's so good at killing the late game elites of the game, either Reptomancer in Act 3 or Nemesis in Act 3 or the Spear and Shield in Act 4. All are very good targets for this Ritual Dagger to be killed very quickly. Just a card you can carry around to just instantly end some fights once it's strong enough, and it keeps getting stronger once it kills things. All the better if you can multiply its damage. If you've got a Pen Nib to make it do double damage, or you can apply Vulnerable consistently, or if on Watcher you have Wrath Stance, all of these make it a lot better. You decide to stay in line out of fear to see what will happen. Eventually, you are face to face with the leader. A well-dressed cultist hands you an ornate dagger. Like the others before you, you slash your forearm, hence the damage, and let blood drip into the misshapen bowl. The cultists chant and holler for you. Caw, caw, caw. You chant too. Why not? Why not, Twitch chat? YouTube chat. Why not? Vampires. This is one of my favorite events to see in Act 2. Navigating an unlit street, you come across several hooded figures in the midst of some dark ritual. As you approach, they turn to you in eerie unison. The tallest amongst them bears fanged teeth and extends a long, pale hand towards you. Join us, brother, and feel the warmth of the spire. Usually you only have two options here. Remove all your strikes and receive 5 bite cards in exchange for 1/3 of your max health, 30 max HP on this run. Or refuse the vampire deal. There's a special offer if you have the Blood Vial Relic. A vial containing the blood of a pure and elder vampire, says the Blood Vial. And it is the elder vampire of these vampires. Trading the Blood Vial allows you to get the bite cards without losing your max health. But when do you want the bites in the first place? Well, bites replace your strikes with slightly higher damage healing cards in exchange for usually a lot of your max health. The healing of 2 health doesn't seem like much, but it's actually quite useful. A little bit of diligence in combats allows bites to keep you topped up at full health. Even if your full health is only 40 or 50, that's more health than you'd probably have otherwise if you're at 30 health out of full and keep taking damage in Act 2. What I really like about bites is that they let you take multiple fights in succession, particularly in Act 2, without losing health, so that you can take on multiple elites while staying healthy, and even upgrade at fires between them. So where the real strength to bites for me personally is the ability to progress through combats and elites in Act 2 while still upgrading at rest sites. Bites are particularly useful in runs that are in desperate need of a way to heal themselves, like runs where you have a coffee dripper and you can't sleep at rest sites. The bites are a lot better. The more strike cards you have, the better the bites are to take a deal on, because you remove all of the strikes for free. Whether you have 1 or 5 strikes, you get 5 bites in return and lose all the strikes. So more strikes equals it's better to take bites. Bites are also attack cards, so if you have the Molten Egg, they'll be upgraded when you add them to your deck. And since you're adding cards to your deck, the Ceramic Fish gives you 9 gold per card. That means with this particular combination of relics on screen, the Molten Egg and the Ceramic Fish, we trade the Blood Vial to the vampires. We get 5 upgraded bites and 45 gold from the Ceramic Fish when that happens. And upgraded bites say deal 8 damage, heal for 3. This can be a really good way to keep your run going on any character. Silent, Watcher, Defect, Ironclad, it doesn't matter. Bites upgraded are very, very good to have. The pale figures gasp as you take out the Blood Vial. The Master's blood! The Master's blood! The Master's blood! They all chant fervently as the tall one bows before you. Drink from his blood and become one with him. The chant growing louder, you consume the contents of the vial. Your vision immediately warps and fades to darkness. You wake up sometime later. An intense hunger passes through your belly. You must feed. Would I ever turn down bites if I have Blood Vial? Yes, if you don't want to add 5 attack cards to your deck in exchange for your strikes, it may not be a good deal. For example, if you're a poison-based silent, you might not want to add a whole bunch of bites. Or if you're a deck that's already removed all the strikes successfully, adding 5 bites could really, really bloat your deck very quickly and make it difficult to draw important cards. So you don't always want bites, even if they're offered to you with upgrades or for no max health, just because of the card count. The Old Beggar. Oh, that's right, we didn't visit Cleric. We have to do Cleric. Is it just regular beggar? Yes. An old beggar, cloaked in fur, reaches his hands out towards you as you pass. Spare some coin, child, asks the beggar. You can either give the beggar some money to get a card removal, or you can leave. Spoiler alert, this is secretly Cleric in disguise. There's no other interactions to be had. It's just pay 75 gold for remove or don't. If you've got a card you want to get rid of, it's generally a good deal. It's the same price or better as the shop, and it won't increase your future remove price. So you might as well take the deal if you get it. But it's definitely not a great event overall. The beggar takes off its cloak to reveal that he is cleric. You are a kind soul. Receive my purification. He screams. You are unsure if he is grateful or mad. And then a card is removed. We'll take out the bash, just for funsies here. This is another event with secret text if you return to the event from the map now. I hope you do better this time, friend, he shouts. Wondering what was implied by this, you push forward. And there's actually different secret text if you don't give him the money. I'll leave you to discover that in your own games. But I wanted to point out the secret text there on the Act 2 events. Okay, we'll look at the library momentarily, but there's a shrine event I want to cover before we do that one. So those are most of the common events you can encounter in Act 2. All told, there's several curses, a couple of add a whole bunch of cards to your deck options that you may or may not necessarily want to take, and a couple events, the Ancient Writing and the Augmenter, that are almost unequivocally good. Otherwise, it's a bit of a mixed bag here. And Act 2 events are not going to be very consistently good for you unless you have certain relics, the ones depicted at the top of the screen here in particular. As far as special events that you can get in Act 2, some of these we've already talked about in our Act 1 video, events that can appear in any act, like the Bonfire Spirits, the Duplicator, the Face Trader, the Ominous Forge. But there are some events that are rare that only start appearing here in Act 2. And the Knowing Skull is one of them. This event here. So this is seen pretty infrequently. I believe you have to have a certain health threshold for the Knowing Skull to appear. This is one of the weirdest but also best events you can find in Act 2. You find yourself in an old decorated chamber. In the center of the room, a large skull sits atop an ornate pedestal. As you approach, the skull bursts into flames and begins to face you. What is it you seek? What is it you offer? What are you buying? In sync with its final words, the door behind you slams shut. So all of the options cost health here. Important thing to note is that this is not a simple choose one of 4, but rather the top 3 options can be picked repeatedly, and then the last option leaves the event. And all of the options cost health. So if I want to pick me up, we pay 6 health, and we get a potion. You can pick that top option again, but now it costs more health. I can pick Riches, gain 90 gold for 6 health. That actually heals us, in this case with the Bloody Idol. So you could get a lot of money for very cheap here. Although, since the price goes up every time, you can't get unlimited money this way. But if you're so lucky as to run into this event with Bloody Idol, you can get a ton of money for very cheap. Generally speaking, clicking on Riches at least a couple of times, I strongly recommend, because the exchange ratio of health to money, even if you're not getting any heal back, is huge here. You can just get a ton of money from the Knowing Skull if you're willing to go down to half health or something. Success! Get a colorless card. This is an option I strongly recommend you never click on. Why? Because you get a random, uncommon colorless card. You cannot get a rare colorless card, and you cannot refuse the card. So we click, we get a Dark Shackles. That's actually a pretty good card. Let's click again. Note that we're also healing 5 back here because of the Ceramic Fish and the Bloody Idol. When we add a card to the deck, we heal 5. Normally you have to pay the full price here. Second card added was Swift Strike with an upgrade from Molten Egg. Let's do one more. Discovery. Actually, that's a really good set of 3, quite frankly. Again, I don't recommend this. You're not going to get cards that you want, I assure you. My usual recommendation here is... if you have empty potion slots, it's often worth trading 5 or 6 health for a potion. And then it's really a game of figuring out just how much free health you have to trade into money. Try to figure out how much health you need to survive until the next rest site or the next shop, and trade away pretty much as you can afford. I usually like to click 3 or 4 times on money and then try to limp to a shop. But it really is a question of how much health you can afford to lose. If you find this event and you can't afford to lose any health, then you still have to pay the 6 health to leave. Behind you, mortal. Surely enough, there is a door. And you can leave the event, but you're still down some health, and that's tough. That's tough. Overall, one of the best events you can find. As long as you have health to bargain, the Knowing Skull lets you do all sorts of really good stuff. Let's see. Designer Inspire starts appearing in Act 2, so let's talk about Designer Inspire. Now that we have money, we can take it to this fellow. You discover a colorful shop with the banner Inspire and walk in to see what's inside. Nope, no way, nope, can't let you in. A man with ridiculous clothing appears at the entrance to bar you. This will not do, no, what is this style? Disgusting, are you bleeding? Gross. Business, you a customer? Fine, whatever. He leads out an exaggerated sigh and points at a list of services. The services seem fine, but you would rather punch this smug man in his smug face. Designer Inspire always gives you 3 options. I believe the first 2 are random. It'll either be upgrade 2 random cards, or upgrade 1 card of your choosing. The second choice is either remove 1 or transform 2 cards. And the last option is always remove a card and upgrade a random card. And generally speaking, as long as you've got money to spend, one of these options is almost always worth it. Just kind of a question of whether you want upgrades or removals more. In this situation, since most of the cards are upgraded, random upgrades would actually hit pretty good stuff. So I'd probably take 2 random upgrades here for the cheapest discount. But the most satisfying outcome by far is Punch. You might ask, why does punching this creature lose you health? Well, the answer is, boop. You punch him so hard, your fist hurts. My face! Now I'll have to... blah. He fainted. Who's gross and bleeding now? And the art even changes with a giant swollen lip. Look at that. So satisfying. So satisfying. Who's gross and bleeding now? No text for returning to that. Okay. A beautiful event. Strongly recommend punching at least once. All right. Another very rare event in Act 2 is Inloth. An odd creature with a hunched back sprouting several tentacles is scrounging through a pile of trash and debris in front of you. As you approach, he shuffles forward in a non-threatening manner. Inloth hungry. Feed Inloth. Inloth is a weird gargoyle thing. 2 of your relics are chosen at random. Know that you need 2 relics to encounter Inloth in the first place, so if you're doing a 1 relic challenge run, you can't get this event. Picks 2 relics at random from what you have, and you can choose one of them or none of them to give to Inloth. You lose that relic forever, and get a new special relic called Inloth's Gift, which increases your chance of finding rare cards in combat rewards. It's actually quite useful. Finding more rare cards, particularly a lot more rare cards, is really nice, and you can do some very fun runs with tons of rares if you take this. Note that Inloth can ask for relics that have a one-time effect. For example, a used-up Niao's Lament can still be given to Inloth. Inloth can also ask for relics that have a one-time on-pickup effect, like the strawberry, the mango, and the pear, the potion belt, the old coin, and quite a few others. Relics that have the same... If the first 2 words of the relic's descriptions are on pickup, then you can lose the relic and have no downside. Warpaint and Whetstone also fall into this category. You can give them to Inloth and lose nothing at all. So we'll offer the Niau's Lament, why wouldn't we? Holding the relic out towards him, Inloth snatches it out of your hand with his tentacles, dislocates his jaw, and slurps down your offer in one quick gulp. He gives you a large, toothy grin as more tentacles appear from behind his cloak, these ones brandishing an impossibly neat-looking box. He pushes it towards you until you take it. The strange gift from Inloth. Whenever you try and unwrap it, another wrapped box of the same size lies within. Its box is all the way down. And Inloth's gift improves your chance of finding rares in a lot of different situations. My understanding is that it also works on the Act 2 event, the library, which is the last regular event we have to look at. Let's take a quick look at that one. The library. You come across an ornate building which appears abandoned. A plaque has been torn free from a wall on the floor. It reads, "The Library." Inside, you find countless rows of scrolls, manuscripts, and books. You pick one out and cozy yourself into a chair for some quiet time. You can either read the book to look at 20 different cards, or sleep. Reading is very, very nice here. It gives you a lot of different cards to look at that can really help define your build a lot. Note that the library must show you 20 different cards of random rarity. So you're going to see most of the commons that your character has access to, probably plus a bunch of uncommons, and potentially a rare or two. With Inloth's gift tripling our chance of rare cards, we should be able to see more than one rare. I'm hoping we'll generate more than one. We'll see. It's all up to the RNG here. Or you can heal for 20. This is, I think, 20% of your maximum health, so it's a moderate heal. Not quite as much as you'd get from a rest site. Generally speaking, I recommend looking at cards. Couple things to note, though, is that these cards have a 0% chance of being upgraded normally, so they'll only be upgraded if you have the appropriate egg relic. And once you choose to read, you must take one of the 20 cards offered to you. You are not allowed to skip. However, that said, reading is great. I recommend reading. And yes, Inloth's gift flashes and it says we got 5 extra rare cards. So let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4. Wait, where's the 5th one? I'm going to guess the 5th one was a duplicate and got rerolled again. That's my guess. So one of these other cards secretly rolled into either Corruption, Juggernaut, Reaper, or Immolate, but because there must be 20 different cards, we got a different card instead. That's my guess. Either way, I've never seen the library with 4 different rares, and I just wanted to prove to everybody here that this relic does work on this event. And look at that. That's pretty cool. Give me a Reaper Plus, please. The story is about an insect-controlling teenage girl who aspires to become a hero. The book is filled with creative uses of powers, combat strategies, and varying perspectives. Satisfying. There's, I think, 3 or 4 different little snippets you can get after choosing a card from the library. Each one is based on a different real story, too. So that's pretty cool. They're all little references to real-world authors. All right, what else can we find in Act 2? The Joust, of course. As you make your way through the large buildings, you come across a long, narrow bridge and spot knights on either side facing one another. You approach. Halt! A knight forcefully gestures you to stop with its giant lance. Today is the day I must settle the score with the murderer of my beloved pet Noodles. Until then, you may not pass. Fellow witness, why don't you bet on who you think will emerge victorious? You have to bet here. Again, just like the drug dealer, your character is seemingly really gung-ho on the whole betting thing. And none of your options are to decline. You must wager. Either the murderer, who is overwhelmingly likely to prevail, or the owner, who has a higher payout if they win. This one's a really fun event for me, personally. I really like the numbers that the devs settled on for this event, because you can look at the average expected gold from each of these choices and calculate that one option is on average better than the other. But that's not always the option you want to pick. So let's do some math. You always lose 50 gold. If you bet on the murderer, then there is a 30% chance that you don't get your money back, and a 70% chance that you get 100 gold back. So the average expected gold to be what? Like 100 times 0.7 minus 50? I think is how you do that. So you, on average, gain 20 gold from the murderer option. And then the owner would be 250 times 0.3 minus 50, which is an average of 25 gold gains. So slightly higher gold gain. Essentially, another way of phrasing that is that the magnitude of gold gain for the owner bet is disproportionate to the probability difference here. So mathematically speaking, the owner bet has a slightly higher payout. However, you're more likely to lose outright if you bet on the owner. So if you go owner, you're either going to win big or you're going to come out with nothing. With murderer, you're more likely to come out with something. Greater risk, greater reward. Personally, I'm a noodles believer. Give me strength noodles. Clash, clang, pow. The owner died. You lost the bet, but at least you weren't gouged by a lance. Generally speaking, when it comes to that event, which one you bet on, in my opinion, should be based on how close you are to the nearest shop and how much current money you have. You really want to hit that shop with 300 or so gold. So if you're already above that threshold, go for the owner. But if winning the murderer bet brings you above the amount you need for a relic at the store, I'd bet on the murderer, personally. If you're not a noodles lover, that is. Alright, there's only a couple Act 2 events left to talk about here. Or actually, was that the last of them? Divine Fountain, Women in Blue. Oh no, we need to do the Colosseum. That's right, there is one more. One more common Act 2 event. The Colosseum, which is still grayed out on the list here. That's because the Colosseum is a special event. Unlike any other event in Act 2, Colosseum is floor restricted to floors 27 and up. And that means you can only get the Colosseum event from events that are after the chest in the middle of the act. These events can generate the Colosseum event, and none others. And this is particularly important to be aware of because the Colosseum is very rewarding. Just Colosseum? Yeah, Event Colosseum. Or sometimes called thwack, because that's the sound the game makes when you enter the Colosseum. Thwack! You are knocked unconscious. Groggy and with a throbbing head, you awaken to find yourself thrown into the center of a massive stadium with an overflowing audience of slavers, cultists, and other denizens of the city. An armored giant with a golden crown, that's the champ, bellows at you from atop. We now begin the 4200th combat. A gate on the opposite side opens, and a fight begins. You get no choice. You must fight one blue slaver and one red slaver. It's kind of like the three slavers elite fight from this act, except there's no middle guy, which makes it quite a bit easier. That said, these two can still hit pretty hard on turn 1 and turn 2. The red slaver can still make you vulnerable, and if you're not doing enough damage, this fight can be pretty gnarly. But just like other fights, if you've got good immediate damage, it's no problem. There's no reward for winning that fight. You're just thrown into The Colosseum again. Well done, weakling. The giant mock claps while he riles up the crowd with exaggerated gestures. Time for the real challenge. The last battle left a small opening in the Colosseum's wall. You could easily escape while everyone's distracted. Do you stay and fight? You can choose cowardice and leave the event at this time, or I strongly recommend pressing onwards towards victory. You'll have to do another fight, a more challenging fight, against one Gremlin Nob and one Taskmaster. This counts as an elite fight, so any relics you have that give you bonuses in elite combats, like the Sling of Courage here, or the Preserved Insect, or the Slaver's Collar, will all have an effect. The Taskmaster here just adds wounds. Let's take a look at the AI here. Taskmaster always does damage and adds wounds every turn. Depending on your Ascension level, it'll be a varying number of wounds, up to 3 here at Ascension 20. And then Gremlin Nob is your usual Act 1 Elite Nightmare. Enrages on turn 1, makes you vulnerable on turn 2, and then absolutely slaps you on turn 3, all the while getting strength for every skill you play. That said, if you made it through Act 1, where you have to deal with a Gremlin Nob, then Gremlin Nob plus Taskmaster really isn't that much worse. All you need is some upfront damage to deal with this. I do strongly recommend killing the Gremlin Nob first. Tanking the damage from the Taskmaster isn't that bad. And for this deck, the Whirlwind can, of course, just kill them both very easily. We're more than prepared for this fight. Because this fight shows up so late, generally speaking, it's pretty easy to win without too much damage taken. But if you're, again, of a slow, low-damage deck type, then you may struggle with this just like every other fight in Act 2. If you win the fight against the Colosseum, you get probably the best rewards of any event or fight in the whole game. 2 relics. 1 rare and 1 uncommon, specifically. Stone Calendar here is a rare relic. Mercury Hourglass is an uncommon relic. You always get 1 of each of those rarities. 100 gold. Potentially a potion. And lastly, a card reward. For the demon form, in this case. Just ridiculously rewarding. Getting 2 more relics and 100 gold can really put a run that was struggling back on par, or help a run that's doing well surge ahead of the power curve of the game and become obscenely powerful. Some of my best runs of Slay the Spire ever get the double relics from the Colosseum Nob fight. A little bit of trivia. It used to be the case that instead of a Gremlin Nob and a Taskmaster, you actually fought 2 Gremlin Nobs in this Colosseum fight. It also wasn't floor restricted, so you could fight 2 Gremlin Nobs on this floor rather than on this floor, and that was a very big difference. Apparently a lot of players died to those terrible nobbers, and so it was changed for the full release of the game, but I still remember the terror of fighting 2 Nobs at the same time. Alright, YouTube, that does cover all of the different events that you can encounter in Act 2. I think that it's, generally speaking, wise to avoid early events in Act 2 if you don't have the Golden Idol or some kind of curse protection. Meanwhile, going more events later in the act can be really rewarding because of the Colosseum fights. The library and the ancient writing, the bites can also be really, and the apparitions, of course, too, can also be some of the better events of the acts. Those are the things to look for, but beware curses, beware forced damage in Act 2 events. So hopefully that helps you with your decision-making, your pathing in Act 2 at home. That is where I'm going to conclude this video on the events of Act 2. I hope you found it exceedingly helpful for your own Act 2s in the Spire. Good luck out there. Hey there. If you enjoyed that video, watch this one next. And before you go, join us on Twitch and watch live. I'm there 5 days a week playing Slay the Spire, answering questions, and chilling with the community. Click the link in the description to follow right now. Ta-ta for now.